right, officially recording. Officially, no more stops and starts and tests. How you doing, man?
Good, not too shabby.
That's good. So, what have you been doing the past week?
Celebrating from Friday. Kyle got off. That was pretty great.
Yeah, I
And I
seen that.
spent the whole time in a very small room with 8 furnaces, arguing on the phone with boomers.
8 furnaces. That
All done now.
sounds like a lot of furnaces, to be honest. What was going on with that? Anything crazy?
They're renovating. The people that had it before ran it into the ground. Never did any sort of maintenance over the 20-year span except for the bare minimum. And
All
then
right,
new owners came in and they want to renovate everything and get everything up to speed. So that's why I'm there.
I got you. All right. Well, I've been doing nothing. Also, other than playing just random CRPGs, like what everyone will see, Neverwinter. I forgot how fun the game was.
What's the C stand for?
Classic, from
Oh,
my
okay.
understanding. So, like Baldur's Gate, that type of thing, where it's like you can live, I forget what it's called. It's like real time action, or you can, pause it per attack. I like having that option.
Especially for combat. I liked Fallout for that too. The
Oh
originals.
yeah. I never liked VATS in Fallout. I always went melee, so I never had a need for VATS. Or I would do snipers. So VATS would like actually hinder me.
I like getting a Desert Eagle and seeing how many headshots you can string together in one round of that. And you get the perk where you get all your action points back after you kill somebody on the odd time. You just fucking go hard.
Yeah, I got you. So, have you played D&D in your world the past couple weeks?
Yeah, last Tuesday we played. It was a good time. I made one guy so uncomfortable with an effeminate voice that I did that he was like cringing in the corner. That was Boulder. He's a pretty stocky guy, and you've never seen a stocky guy try to fold himself into a corner more in your life. He just didn't want to even hear it. I couldn't help laughing. And I'm trying to roleplay with Mitra. We're both just laughing our balls off. And then we just finally calmed down a little bit. And he's like, "We could do this." I'm like, "Yes, we could do this." And then from that point on, now that I knew it made him uncomfortable, I went a little harder too, just to see if I could push him a bit more. It's a good time.
It
Because
seems
they
like a rough time if you're bashful, I guess.
It is too, and it's definitely not me. So it's like totally out of my character to talk with a lisp like I was. I actually did like 5 different voices that night. It was my throat was hurting after that. It's good though. They got to meet the king because they're 5 days into their 10-day investigation. So he wanted to know where they were at. And remember, the king is the one who actually committed the crime, along with 4 other people from the main set of books. So Rikus, August, Sadira, Tithian are the 4 that they meet.
I
We role
got you.
play through the whole situation. The king's down with their idea. Everything parts on pretty good terms. After that, they get permission from the king to talk to the head Templar because now they want to go to Kinera's house and search it and start doing things like with the Templar head involved. So first they have to go meet the guy. And actually, in the Dark Sun book, it says he's a bit of an effeminate fop. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just try to play that out. But they went up and met him. I'm trying to remember what else they did. Really, it took a long time to role play meeting the king and then meeting the Templar head. After that, they essentially we left off at the end of that day. So it was mostly just a role playing one where there was just lots of back and forth and talking. If I
I
remember
got you.
anything else, I'll tell you. But that was good times. I also don't want to spoil it for when we actually talk about those ones.
Yeah, I got
But it
you. Like
was
when we start getting into the shenanigans.
yeah,
But
because we can do the whole session out. I have notes written down. I just don't have my notes with me. I left them at his house. Otherwise, I'd have a way better idea of what we're talking about for tonight or for that night. I mean.
yeah, I think at this point we're still kind of just building what the idea is, and I'm gonna start reaching out to some, not reaching out, but start digging into some subreddits and stuff, and maybe try to pull in some of their like. It wouldn't be like a green text or Reddit D&D horror story, but it'd be like a description of someone's campaign or the story of their land. Just discuss like interesting subjects and how cool that stuff is.
Mm.
Because I like looking. I like the worlds people create and just how persistent like D&D is. I like persistence.
And how everybody can take some of the same settings and just spin it a different way.
Yeah.
That's what I like. A lot of the RPG books that I read as a kid, I could tell were just spin-offs of people's D&D groups.
Yeah, pretty much. And then there are some people that took their D&D group into like MMO and stuff, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I play Vermintide with pretty much two of the three guys are in the D&D group, so it's a bit D&D-ish for us too. And I actually get to play, which is a bonus for me. So Vermintide's a great fun game.
Yeah, I like the Firebender or Pyromancer. That's what it's called, or you could be called something else based off, I guess, class
Yeah,
archetype or
each one.
something.
Yeah, each one has three different classes to the archetype, and then a couple of expansions came out, so a few of them have four choices. I took the Grail Knight because when I played Fantasy, I was Bretonia, so I had to go with it.
I
And
guess.
rules.
Yeah. So for D&D, I have looked at several programs that let you build dungeons, like kind of like what you use, except for them it's more of like a you build the terrain and then you just drag and drop what applies, and then you could probably glitch terrain to build giant, monuments. But I thought that was
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
not.
cool. Like, why can't like video games have map makers, map editors? There's SDKs and stuff for creating mods for video games. Why hasn't people start making stuff for like D&D where you could build it and then literally just your friends join the game and it plays like like a tabletop simulator, but it's specifically designed for tabletop, and then communities can go in and edit and change rules to fit different modules. There should be programs like that to make online play like easy like Roll20, but more
It is.
creativity and freedom.
No, they have that in Roll20. You can buy pre-made modules that have counters and everything built into it, even the monster stats. You just click on them and it's got it all there. Yeah, those modules exist for Roll20. Pretty much what you just said.
Well, I've seen on Steam, and there was a couple that it looked like so much like so close to what like I guess a 2021 Neverwinter Nights remake would look like, or I guess Divinity 2 Original Sin, like something like that. And you just have all your stat sheets you can edit for your bosses and stuff, and it kind of plays out just like a classic RPG, but you roll and it's turn based. I like a gamify like high tech versions of stuff. I know you're into you went low tech with how you guys played this one, but
Yeah, I just found it was high price for a small reward. You do a battle, maybe two hours in the battle. Sometimes it can be as short as 20 minutes, depending on what level the party is and how keyed they are to defeat whatever you have ready for them. It could go really badly for you. They get a couple criticals. Spent 2.5 hours making a map that people fought on for 10 minutes, and it's on to the next one.
yeah,
With a dungeon, it's a little better because you can backtrack and use it. But again, the same thing. You make one entire dungeon, they go there once, that's that. Except on my world where I would restock some of my old dungeons and reuse the old ones.
well
Would
that
have a
makes
couple
sense.
different characters. And gives it history too.
Well, also you could recycle dungeons, just change out, just change out the monsters in it, or maybe a little bit of the layout. And since if they're in an area, you have four dungeons and they're all slightly variants of each other, but it's because they're like around the same mountain range or around the same mountain or valley or whatever.
Well, there's time between two, so the one group of characters adventures online in the first set in 600, and I fast forwarded 100 years. A lot of stuff can happen in 100 years. So then the next set of characters can go through that same dungeon, change up the monsters, or even use the same monsters again if you want, if it's different people, and go from there.
True that. Like, yeah, I imagine, or since it's your world that you've created too, and we've already went into how the players affected the world layout already. Never mind. I was going to say players could change the layout too, and it's still the same, just changed based off their actions. But yeah, we've already touched on that. I should keep
Yeah,
notes.
it can be very permanent on my world. And
What?
I got that country wrong in the first episode when I said the country they destroyed. It's actually called Shanchan. The lantern that
Shanchan.
I kept saying is, yeah, lantern I kept mentioning is the mage one, the mage country. Very magic heavy. They have a magic shield that surrounds their whole country called the Mythal. I stole the Mythal from Forgotten Realms. Essentially, it's just a magical curtain that goes over a certain area. And if you're of a certain bloodline and you're in that curtain, you can use magic no matter what you are of a certain spell set. Kind of like you could have this farmer out in the field, and this is the example I used. They had a farmer out in the field, and Sanctuarian sent some people to investigate, and they fucked with the farmer. He ended up not liking them, shoved a fireball down their throat. He should not be able to cast a fireball, but because he was within the Mythal granted him the power to use certain spell levels and certain spells to defend himself or offensively as he will. But if he took 1 foot outside the Mythal, he'd just be a farmer.
I got you. Okay.
So that made them very powerful in their own territory. You couldn't really invade because you'd have all these nobodies that could throw fireballs, lightning bolts, acid storms right in your face. So everybody could defend their land equally. But you also couldn't grow your borders.
So, okay, I want to ask, in your game and world, could someone from like in a party hire people and eventually build some kind of criminal enterprise as they adventure forth? Like, is that a possible thing that could be kept up with and that you would
That's
allow?
exactly what Boulder's doing right now in my campaign. Because
Okay.
there is no thieves guild on Athos. Because thieves guilds don't make sense when everybody's a slave. But in Tier, where they're at right now, all the slaves are freed. So now all of a sudden there's this vacuum where thieves could theoretically be. So he is now setting up the first thieves guild on Athos. He's a cobbler, so he wants to use the bootsmiths and the boot blacks and all the shoemakers, all those types of tradespeople. Those are going to be like his mafia. He's going to move all the stolen goods through them, and he's currently trying to get one of the merchant houses on his side, which will probably be House Wilvir, because they've been dealing with Wilvir pretty much from the beginning. So
And
merchant houses love it, so they get more
could
money.
so if something bad happens in the world, could people be sent out uh, to kill the, I guess, the criminal player or whatever? Or
Well, in Perennia, back when Lancelot was running around, the Devil's Horns were kind of like the assassins of the old days, the Hashashins, the original Arab ones, where you could kind of hire them to go kill people. So they were hired by Shanchan, the country that was destroyed. And in that history thing that I sent you, that PDF that had the history of all of Perennia, it's mentioned in there too, where the Devil's Horns were the number one. They were kind of the power behind the scenes in Shanchanchu because that's where they were based out of. So they had a lot of local power. But anyway, Lancelot destroyed them too. They were a shadowy criminal organization, and they were the ones that tried to assassinate his wife and son. So he killed them to the man too, and said that if he ever found another one again, it would be war. So they went very heavy underground as long as he was around for the next 30 years, I think. Because you could tell they're devil's horns because they had to have the tattoo. But the tattoo could be hidden with makeup or magic or stuff like that. But you knew they were part of the organization if you had it. And then the tattoo also gave them powers and shit.
okay, that's pretty cool. I see. I like how you can get deep into the world like
Had
that.
to. They force it on you sometimes. You'll have the most innocuous thing, or just something you half-ass mention, corner of your mouth, not thinking, and all of a sudden they jump on it. A very good example of this is again with Lancelot. He was coming up with mutants as he first started out. And he came over the mountain, out of the valleys. He wanted his first mission was to find other mutants like himself, and he wanted to make basically a place for them to train like X-Men. Same idea. Wanted to make a safe place for them called the Sanctuary. So one of the ones he found that I just kind of half-assed mentioned and never thought of the consequences was a guy whose mutant power was he was able to see whether what someone's alignment was. Like he had the no alignment spell, but again, it was a mutant, so I tried to twist it. So I said that he got to see. Remember in the old days with Disney, where you'd have like the good guy on the one shoulder and the bad guy on the other shoulder, like the devil and the angel, and
Oh
they would fight.
yeah.
Well, he would see devils and angels on their shoulders, and depending on what the devils and angels were like, that would correspond with what their alignment was, and that's how he was going to use them to weed out all the bad people. Well, I never really thought of it when I mentioned that he had it because I figured he'd just use it a few times. He ended up fucking making that guy a main part. Then he wanted to make sure his family was okay, so I had to make up a family for him. Then he wanted to make sure that there was no one else back in his village that was under the same duress as him. So I had to make up where the guy was from. And like that's how players make work for you. You just take something you don't really think of, but they're such a integral part of what the player's plans are. They want to make sure that they can hedge their bets and keep this guy. He went way out of his way to make sure that guy would be happy. And it ended up really well for him in the long run. He was able to use that guy to weed out a lot of potential bad guys trying to get close.
Okay, so man, there's I'm speechless because it's like you've already went in the direction I wanted to go with that idea. And then in that same theory, someone could secretly start a cult if they wanted to, or a secret magic group. Because you said magic is illegal, like it would be like shot on sight, as it were. Not
On
shot, but
Athos, yeah. On Athos. Not on Perennia. Perennia magic is heavy. But on the current world they're on right now, yeah, if you were to use non-divine magic, so like not a druid, not a cleric, and some people couldn't tell the difference. You could be a druid or a cleric from somewhere where nobody knew you, and if you use magic, they'd be like sorcerer and try to kill you or lynch you or whatever. But yeah, it's the underground. There's two underground cabals on Athos. There's the good one, the Veiled Alliance, and then there's the bad one, which is the cult of the actual dragon in charge.
okay. And and I was thinking like, how would I've read this in stories. I've heard this from people that's played. How does one get like secret stuff done with the DM? Like, do you just write it on paper or message them? Like, how is that allowed? You know, like I
Well,
never understood how that works.
in the old days, circa 2000, so long ago. But in 2000, right before text messages, we used to go out and smoke a joint, and if anyone wanted to talk to me, we would go stand off from everyone else, kind of whisper to the side, and go from there. Now, in the day of text messages, text me what they wanted to. So that's what Boulder does. He wanted to do
And
his
then you
secret youth
roll
guild.
or whatever just to see if that works.
Yeah, in his case, I'm just going to decide whether it works based on the information he gives me, because a percentage isn't going to work in this time. Also, he is way too busy to actually put the legwork in to make it a thing right now. He's just kind of feeling everything out, putting everything in line. Once they're done their main quest, because I don't think I've mentioned what their roadmap is. The roadmap was get Salt View figured out. They've done that. Then from there, go to Tyr. From there, they're going to do the module that I picked out, which is called the Road to Uruk, which is about the country of Uruk wanting to go to war with Tyr. Because after they freed the slaves and Kalak took all the metal, they haven't actually delivered metal to anyone else in months. And they are the biggest supplier of metal there is. Also, Uruk's leader heard that Tyr doesn't have a king anymore. And the leader of Uruk is actually a dragon king, just like Kalak was. Nobody really knows that these guys are super powerful immortals. So he's like, well, fuck, I'll just take Tyr too. So he gets an army together, and he's sending that army currently towards Tyr. Their mission that they're on is the first of 9 missions to get how many guys they're going to be able to muster together to go against that army in Uruk. So once they're done this 9 mission, or the one of 9 mission, they have the other 8 to do, which will be far faster than this ninth mission. I just started with the hardest one. And from there, they end up leading the army, which is something they don't know. And then
Hold on, I'm gonna
they got to
stop you
fight
real
that.
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're close to your mic or if you're talking a little bit louder, stay that way because now your audio is just a consistent like it's in the yellow, which is good. It's right in the
Good.
middle. So if you're talking close to it or talking a little bit louder, do that.
Okay,
Sorry.
I don't know what I'm doing different. I'll keep going.
I just started
I was
hearing you
almost
talk a
done.
little bit louder, and that's why I was like, all right, well, whatever he's doing,
Yeah.
I need him to keep his face right there. No, it wasn't bad. It was just it just sounded like 100% better. Whatever you did, it's all good though. Audio is still perfect.
Good. Yeah, it's the Road to Uruk, and then they get 5 years, and then they do a module that sets them up to become either the Evangians, which are good immortals, or dragon sorcerers, which are just like the guys that are running the other country. So setting them up to be immortals essentially, and then just finish out. The challenge I made them at the very beginning of this campaign was to be the first truly good people on Athos and become Evangion, which is something nobody's done. It's so easy to be bad on Athos, it's not even funny. So my challenge was to them to go against the grain, and they've been doing a good job so far. But I also haven't gone too hard at them because nobody knows who they are. After they do this Road to Uruk and that 5 year stretch, I'm going to screw with them pretty hard. But they get to do whatever they want in that 5 years. So far, Muad'Dib has the idea to make what's called a Agassi, which is just a fucking massive wagon, so big that you can pen up slaves in it, and it's pulled by two giant beetles that are the size of garbage trucks. The two of them pull it across the desert on giant rollers. So he wants to make one of them, but have it like a mobile blacksmithy, and also have places to store cargo. So they're traveling merchants that can repair your shit because he's a blacksmith, which is pretty rare on Athos.
Okay.
Yeah, and why he does that in that 5 year stretch, that's when we're going to play out Boulder's idea to be the Thieves Guild. So I'll make some missions for him to go do that. They're also getting all their powerful shit in that time period too. That's when Mitra is going to get his really good sword. I don't know if they'll have it yet, so and they're going to listen to this, so I won't tell exactly what they get. But they get Mitra gets his due. He's gone without this eye for a long time now, so he gets his two big magic items. Eldaril also gets his two big magic items in that 5 year stretch, and then everyone will have them by the end of that, and then they go into the final module.
Okay. So, all right. Sorry, I'm listening. It's hard to try to like paint the picture and then also have a response ready to go. Uh,
Oh, fun.
if you got more to that, just keep talking. Sorry, I'm just trying to paint the picture so I can respond. And you're
Really,
okay.
they
Oh,
know that this is the plan too, so they've acted accordingly. They know what they want to do with their time, and they've got their plans ahead of time. That way, when we're done this module and I spring on them, okay, you have 5 years to fill up. Let's figure it out. Because it's not going to be day to day like we're doing right now. I'm picking 3 key points to give each of them 3 key missions. So there's 4 of them. So that's 12 missions. So basically, we do 12 missions for that 5 year span, and then all of a sudden they're at the end. By the time they start that, they should be level 12. By the time they're done the module, they should be level 16. From there, depending on where they're at, see if they want to keep going to 20, if it's feasible. Because once you get past 15, it's counters are hard to do. Everybody is pretty tweaked, and it's make or break.
yeah, okay. Um, when once like, how do you know if an adventure in your specifically in your world, like how how does a player retire their character, or how can they like establish something that just has them as like let's say they decide to open an adventurer hall or something, and then that's how they retire, just being a mentor, a tutor, and a guy that just runs, the business. Like, can they do
Well,
that, or do they have to just like die or something?
no, it's a little of both. I've had characters straight up die, like the one guy I think I told you about that I did the whole entire first part of the campaign. It was all about him. And when it got to the pivotal part, he ended up dying to the villain. It was just so dramatic. And I asked him if he wanted to resurrect this guy after, and he said no. It's like that was a good ending. He's like, well, just let that guy die. I'd like to make another guy. I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. That's the
Okay.
way a character can die. It can be random. Sometimes you'll just have a character die to a critical to some fucking random guy in a dungeon. It happens. This is a game with resurrection, though, so dying isn't a huge deal. It's more of a setback to the party and a setback to see who you can have it. Or, sorry, who can actually come back from the dead. I have my own standing house rule that every time you come back from the dead, there's a 10% chance you simply don't want to come back. The soul isn't willing. I think it's a little more realistic view on it. So, yeah, I've had people fail that, but and it's cumulative too. So you die once, 10%, die twice, 20%, die three times, 30, and so on. And people will
Yeah.
die sometimes that often.
Yeah, we talked about this. It's like what I'm used to in an MMO. Like I'm not even going to name the MMOs, but like a fatigue system where it's like a knockout, but you can only be knocked out so many times before you either need a rest or you just die out, or whatever you do to recover that fatigue gauge is what I would call it. But
Well, fatigue, I would more equate with just getting knocked out past 0 hit points. I'm talking like your guy got splattered against the fucking wall, like he did. Like you have to make a new character. What you're talking about, I think, is more when a guy gets knocked out at the middle or at the end of a battle, and the injuries aren't enough that you think that that person would die, or
well,
they
that's
didn't get past
yeah,
that.
that's what I was getting at. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
no,
I know what you
it's like these they hit zero, but it's not like a death until that they've been knocked out enough, or that hit is just so good that it just completely kills them. So, like, I was just meaning like something
mean.
that isn't outright killing them, or it only just knocks them out, or it makes them hit zero. And then, like, they get up and it takes like 25. They roll and it takes whatever calculation percentage away from whatever this arbitrary fatigue number is. And then
And it's
if they roll past what they have left, then that save is dead.
yeah, and they have that system shock too. If you want to take it that one more step and make it so that the con matters even more, like a truly tough guy is hard to take down, you could just add a system shock when it gets in -10, which is what I do anyway. But that's I don't think that's a normal rule. But shit, what did you just say? I had something.
Well, I was just saying, like, I was just talking about how an MMO does a fatigue system and how I understand what you're, and then I was just pretty much reiterating what you were saying, but explaining it in a way I would or anybody else that isn't
Yeah,
familiar with the system.
yeah,
And
I remember.
yeah, it's all
Nothing.
good. But so right now, what's going on in your world? Like, I want to. Well, I guess we're not at that point where we start going through everything. So how do you deal? Like, do you allow politicking or politics in general in your games?
Oh, sorry, I remember what I wanted to say now.
Okay.
It was in regards to death because you were going down that road. Um, Also, death is very dependent on the type of DM there is running it. I don't see killing the characters as my end result. I want to tell a story. They're along on the story. If they happen to die along the way on the story, that's kind of on them. I try to set up encounters to be fair, with not too challenging in the sense that they're hopeless. They walk in there, the guy one shots them. It's like, why the fuck were they even there? But there
Yeah.
are people that play this game that is their objective, and I've heard that more than anything else. And the number one thing I'm told by people that have played with other DMs, which is roughly 6 or 7 in my time, they all say the same thing. You don't seem like you're out to get us. And they say it like that. And a lot of people that play this game
Well, it's
actually
true.
do
It
it like
shouldn't
that.
be
And
a
it has a
DM
bad rep
versus
too.
players.
But that exactly, and you put it the right terms too. Verse. Well, I'm not versus my players unless it's in the combat. Then it's quite literal. But up until that point, the modules aren't called kill your player modules. They're called adventure modules. If your characters die along the way, that's dramatic. That's part of movies too. Most of our culture revolves around some sort of meaningful death being an attainable thing. Sometimes you just die over nothing.
Oh
You
yeah,
died
or
of
it's
poison.
like your death is just like a blip in the radar, just because that's the reality of where you were in society. You had like 4 people that remembered you, and that was just the people, your ragtag band of no one even knows who the hell you guys are. So you just die as a blip on a fucking ogre attack.
So yeah, I just want to mention that about death too. It all depends on whether you want to kill them or not. There are times where I've been like, when I have the two parties facing each other, whoever wins this battle, characters at the end do not walk away. Not only that, the people that killed you get to pick one piece of loot off of each of you to take with them as a
Oh,
trophy.
see, I like that. Like a real hardcore PvP type deal.
And that was the same at the end of the Leviathan chain with the second group of Sanctuarians, where I said, "This is the final battle. This guy's quite tough. If he hits you, there's a good chance that he'll kill you in a couple of shots. So bring your A game." And they crushed it because they learned, because it was the vets and they lost against the noobs in that PvP one that I had. This time going in there, there was no screwing around. Muad'Dib in particular had exactly what he wanted to do worked out, like days in advance. So they tackled that final one and kicked the shit out of that Leviathan and saved Perennia. I'd have wrecked it too. If they'd have failed, I'd been like, done. Shattered that shit, made a few islands, and kept going.
Yeah, okay. Would you ever let your players just go rogue and start being evil?
Oh, that's something I've never mentioned until now. I've actually had evil groups of characters who was dedicated to evil and used the Book of Vile Darkness that I mentioned in the last episode. There's a feat system in it where you can be masochist or all sorts of fun stuff. You amputate yourself, and yeah, it's pretty out there. Anyway, they were bad guys, and Chunk and Gronk, again in that history that I sent you, they represent the Dark Nation. So again, I had players ask, like, we want to be the bad guys on your world. So I decided to go that route. And they had a book in 3.5 that allowed you to break a monster out into character classes. And they were related to hit dice. So for instance, if you were an ogre, they would divvy that out across 6 levels. So you could level up as a monster. So he was an ogre. That's Gronk was a troll. Um, and Obby was a Rakshasa. Bobby was hands down the most powerful monster in regards to starting hit dice. Rakshasa had 20 levels, if I remember right, or 19. But it was such a powerful monster, they had to divvy it out into basically a 20 class level. But it was pretty cool. If you look up a Rakshasa, they look like walking panthers, I guess, with backwards hands, and they are shape changers. So you have a shape changer, a troll, and an ogre as the main characters in the bad guy storyline. They worked for a guy called the fuck the Vile Lord. Now I don't know how this idea came to me. One day I was sitting there and thinking about the villains for this and how this all was going to happen, and I just thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny if the villain was actually, because I was going through that book and I found like a brownie, or was it a pixie? Might have been a pixie. Either way, this fairy creature was normally good. And they're like, well, what if he had a head injury and he went evil and he didn't know that he was actually good? And he actually led this criminal organization. And I'm going to have him, since he's a shape changer and he can always be invisible, be different things all the time to keep the players guessing as to what they're actually looking for. So one time they met him, he was a red dragon. Another time they met him, he was a chimera. Another time they met him, he was a troll, just like Gronk. Just screwing with them. And they really were guessing all the time. They didn't really have any idea what they were working for until they got to the level where they got a spell called See Invisibility. And I think it was Gronk. He was the cleric because he was a troll cleric, which is fucking terrifying, let me tell you. And he saw through it. And I'm like, and I texted it to him. This is right when texts were good. I texted it to where the book of, or where the vile dark, or where the vile lord normally is. There is just a little brownie, about 18 inches tall, a bit of a pot belly, and going bald. And he was like, "What? Yeah, that's your boss." And then that was a funny role play because obviously Chunk couldn't tell what he was because he couldn't see invisibility. Yeah,
Okay. Um. Well, I was like when I was said like going evil, I was more referring to like just halfway through whatever they're doing, they're like, oh, God, this NPC, like they're not
they
metagaming.
were.
They're just like, you know what, this reward sucks, and then they just kill the person, and then they just be like, fuck this, we make more money being bandits, and they just start like stop following being adventurers and just start being bad people. Would you allow that, and then try to change what you had
Changing
planned
in
on going?
alignment like that. I like to plan ahead because not everybody in the party wants to do that. And once you go evil, you have to go with that lifestyle. So it becomes a lot harder for you to do basically anything unless there is some sort of evil criminal organization to go with you, which was kind of what I was getting at. So I got off topic talking about those two.
Oh, you're
But they
good.
did evil things like what you said. One time they didn't feel like they got paid enough, so they killed their contact. There was a network of evil cities where you could go in there and buy slaves. Um, Chunk and Gronk were not chaotic evils. They never really went out of their way to do stuff too evil, but like they would kidnap women and children and use them as sacrifices because there was a sacrifice system where if you sacrificed innocent people, you would get buffs. They would go around and kidnap innocent people and do buffs. But when they were doing that, they raised the ire of the good people on the islands. So then you have that dynamic. It is a lot harder to be good than it is to be evil, and do it well.
That's true because
Otherwise, you're just a neutral evil.
I was looking specifically at Neverwinter, which is on screen now. Uh, for anybody that sees me idling, it's me just losing my mind talking and not playing the game. But anyways, as I'm listening to you, as I was preparing this game earlier for a sorcerer build, you know, they started talking about alignments, and they said, and just like most D&D modules or tabletop modules, the bad shit, like let's say for example, just a random number, you kill someone, that's -6 points to your alignment, whereas you save someone's life, that's only like 3 points, or you save a city, that could be 4 points. It's still like you're still on a losing game if you try to do bad good deeds and then cover them up with good. It's like you have to save
Um,
two people's life for every one you take.
and and that's fair, but I also tried not to do that. That's why you have a dark network of evil criminal cities. They actually ended up taking it to the point where there was an uprising and they became their own legitimate country, recognized by the other countries in the world.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
actually pretty cool. Having to play
yeah,
like resource management that way.
yeah. They ended up calling themselves a Dark Nation. They ended up taking up the bottom half of Galtrin. So while Chunk and Gronk were there, they ascended and became gods, like most of the characters.
Did
That's
you just
the end
name a
result.
location that's on one of your maps?
It is, yeah.
Oh,
Galtrin's the bottom left-hand corner island.
all right.
It's the
If
one that would be
anybody,
closest to the mail.
I'll post the Imgur link that I uploaded of what the file, the pictures you sent me, the maps. I'll put it
Yep.
in the description for this video next week when it gets uploaded for anybody that's curious to see the lands he's talking about. You
Yeah,
know.
they went around to set up underground networks too. So they went over to Bretonia and started setting up underground networks in each of the towns. They ended up causing a fire that was famous for because it was one of those fires that took out like half a city as bad guys. Like they did their own shit too. Like good guys aren't the only ones that influence things.
That's crazy.
They ended up changing it. They
I
changed the
I
rule
just
of
got
secession.
I just got a good idea. Since we're going to be covering the history of your world, and I've been talking about these programs, I was also thinking about trying to highlight people's like lands and modules and events from their time in D&D. And if I could find one of these program, like these like you drag and drop RPG type of games, not games but programs, I could probably like set up events and play it out so people have an idea, and it'd be a cool production thing to do.
Well, ideally, next time we make you a character and you can sit in on a session.
Fuck yeah.
That's the end result. That's why I
Oh
want to
yeah,
make a
for
character.
sure. But in terms of like continuing just talking about D&D and stuff like that, that would be an avenue to think about. It'd be fun just to build people's like boss fights, or just in land that they were that they enjoyed traveling through, just trying to recreate that, so listeners or the people that experienced it can see it visually in a different aspect. I don't know, it's just a good idea. It's something to do with tabletop, and then we'll have the games going too. I do
You can
want
send you
to play
PDFs,
sorcerer.
all sorts of stuff. You can get like Dark Sun art to be the background too. It's all really good old timey shit.
Hell yeah. So what's the aesthetic like in your land? Like, can you compare it to anything?
Not cartoony like Warcraft. If I had to put it on, not overly. Depends where you go, because like magic was very prevalent in Lantern. So you'd see people walking around like they would be in Neverwinter Nights, like that D&D setting, which is Forgotten Realms. So magic is pretty visible. The odds of finding a magic item on someone are probably 1 in 5. Might even be less, 1 in 3. So mundane to up. So I'd call it a high magic setting. So
Oh
mine is
yeah.
a high magic setting in Lantern, and everywhere else is low magic setting.
Okay.
Lantern is
Is it
the magic
this?
place.
Would the high magic and low magic lands be in like you could travel from one to the other, or is it like
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's a ship system. Again, whenever you'd go to a city, there would be the stagecoaches that you could pay for to go to all the other cities. There'd be a It'd tell you how much each one of those would be, and then if it was a port, it would tell you how much money to go to Lanton, go to Galdrin, to go to Bretonia, and to go to Sort. Be the top right. You couldn't take a boat to sort those since Shan got destroyed. Before Shan got destroyed, you could go from Galdrin to Shan, then north to Sort. But once it got wiped out by the players, nobody lived over there anymore. They had to change entire shipping routes. They changed the whole face of that place. That whole southeastern part of the continent just became dark. Kind of like Carthage, I guess.
That reminds me of what happened in Lineage 1 to Lineage... not Lineage 1 to Twin Lineage... Asheron's Call 1 to Asheron's Call 2, MMO. Whereas a giant apocalyptic event happened in the game. And the first Asheron's Call... And then when they made the second game, it took place years down the road in those lands that was super uninhabited. But
That
yeah,
makes it interesting.
and then people just travel to the areas where there is a population, and then you create the Deadlands. I like
Well,
stuff.
I used it as a setting. I wanted to do D&D, but with countries. So your country was your character. You got to pick your cultures, and it was kind of like any art. What the hell are they called? Where you build like your bases or whatever. RTS.
Yeah,
Yes. Kind
yeah.
of like an RTS. So they'd have their base, which would be their one city, but it would also be kind of like Total War, where you'd have your little army markers. And we played that quite well, and we used that Shan Chan area. And I gave two of the characters one half and the top half and the bottom half of the island in the bottom right of the map. And then around that whole coastline, I divvied up the other three characters. And Mitra had moved away at that time, and so had Eldero. So we did all this via computer. And I did a turn-based system where I would text message them pictures of the map, and they would tell me what they would do based on that. Because you didn't actually have to be there, not for the beginning at least. And then I had a whole battle system worked out. It was fun. But yeah, I got to use that as a setting. That's my point.
That's pretty cool. Like, do you plan
And
on
then
reviving any of like old locations people don't travel to at all in the future, just to tie events from the past or future in together?
they are going to get to adventure in that spot once we're done on Athos. Because I know they're chomping at the bit to go back to 3.5 rules and to make the world themselves again.
Where do
And
you
they
go to
get
get
to go
3.5 material?
online. I
Uh,
won't spend another dime on WotC. I actually own most of the books still too. So we have, I'd say, at least half the books that you could get. You can go to used bookstores to get them too. But WotC sells every single book still, even most of the second edition books you can buy.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, if they weren't hosers, I'd buy from them. But they're
Oh, you
fucking
don't
hosers.
you don't like Canadians?
Not WotC. WotC is Wizards of the Coast. They're the ones that own Dungeons and Dragons right now.
Oh,
The
okay.
IP. I do not like them. Bunch of SJW fucks. Like,
Fucking.
hard.
How are they?
You
What
go
do
to
they
the
do
head.
to be SJWs?
They apologize for Dark Sun on their page. We're sorry for showing slavery.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, fucking embarrassing.
That is fucking embarrassing.
It is. It's not up to them to decide for us what's offensive. Like, get fucked. I happen to love the setting. I don't give a fuck what color the slave is. Yeah, they got that kind of stuff. The 3.5 rules are definitely the go-to rules for our group in general. I don't. I have no interest in fifth. I would try the Genesis system for D&D, but again, it'd be a new system. Genesis system, for those that don't know, rather than having numbers on a dice, you have symbols on a dice, and you roll to achieve symbols.
Yeah.
Sounds weird, but it's not a terrible system. It's really good for the type of game that we're playing.
Have you ever thought about introducing any other systems into your universe? See how that works?
System like game
Like,
system.
yeah, like
Yeah,
I
that's what I
wouldn't
meant.
say Call of
Genesis is the Wizard of the
Cthulhu,
Coin.
but like maybe Pathfinder, or just something.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Genesis would be one of those. Genesis is a different game system, like completely different from D20. I would consider using it and only it. Pathfinder is fine. Like I got no beef with Pathfinder, but it would require us buying more books, and since we already own all the 3.5 books, 3.5 is like your best pair of shoes. You just know them.
Yeah, like I heard a lot of good things about 3.5, but like I said, I don't have experience, so I can't say if it's a piece of shit or not. And everyone's just
I,
going for nostalgia.
I can't think of anything with uh, more variety. The, the most variety of any system I can imagine beyond like GURPS.
Okay.
GURPS
Like
is from the 90s.
so, and there are there guilds in your world?
Yep, absolutely. Guild systems would be most common on Galdrin because it's kind of the America. It was the island that was founded after Bretonia became too tumultuous from the war with Lance and then Swords to the Desert. Not a lot of people want to go there. Shan back in the day was another destination people would go. And in all those places, there would be guilds, but they'd be most relevant. Like, yeah.
Well, I had an idea, like just I don't know what you talking about how they had to do like an RTS type of thing. What if like your player, like not your players, but you created a kind of I guess story around just people gathering together to build a town, and the whole
Well,
story
it's funny you
takes.
mentioned that.
Well, the whole story is like, have you ever seen the show Deadwood? It's high
Yes, I
fantasy, but
love
instead of
it.
cowboys, it's just the different groups of people trying to exist, good or bad, and then just all the drama. It's a small scale thing, and it's a little bit RP heavy, but there'll still be a lot of like combat roles and just things to do. I was, like something beyond combat and adds like, not really story driven, but player driven, I guess. I don't know. Just thinking of that like got me like real pumped for something similar. It doesn't have to be exactly spot on.
I personally have played in that setting for when Lancelot was DM one time. He put me in a group of settlers that were settling a new land, and I was the priest in the group, the
Ooh,
spiritual leader. And we went to this new land, which was basically overrun with orcs, and we were trying to build our own new colony there. So we're colonizers, essentially. So I was the priest in the group of colonizers. So I have done that myself. I've also had a campaign where it all revolved around a stronghold that they had to hold and build a town around. Unfortunately, that one we did not get very far in it, but
why
I
not?
love that kind of stuff you're talking about. The group splintered
Okay. Well, that
because I had
sucks.
to. Yeah, it happens. That was the direction that Lancelot's second group of characters were going on, because he wanted to build a colony somewhere far from the sanctuary that they could base out of and sell their wares. Use as his son David.
Oh, okay.
And then I gave David a radioactive arm, but he wasn't digging the radioactive arm, so I took it back.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I know. It could kill anything and had the touch of death because it was literally like uranium arm. I
Yeah.
thought it was fun.
I, well, having like a fake arm or a special arm reminds me of Metal Gear, and then that also ties into building up a base and just trying to exist in a world where everything positive you do for your base could have some ramifications among the people residing within, and it's like a balance of trying to appease everyone but not have like groups just fight each other over money or territory. That'd be pretty cool. And
The
then
first
like
part
that
of
definitely
the
has a huge impact on the land also because of deforestation if it gets to that point, or war.
war is always a possibility in any setting, that's for sure. At least a good one. But what you're talking about is what the group did on Athos here as their very first arc. Was they were to decide whether they were going to help the city of Saltview and or the little hidden colony of Saltview with Fort Fyra as its front survive, because runaway slaves were hiding in Saltview and they were using Fort Fyra as a frontage to sell the stuff that they were building. So what you're talking about is kind of what they did. They had a settlement and they decided the course of the settlement. If they had decided to not back Saltview and not back Fort Fyra, I would have let that place get overrun with slave takers.
Really?
Yep. But instead, they helped them survive. They decided to back Fort Fyra in its mining of salt. So because they decided to back Fort Fyra, they were able to keep their money going, and that was the culmination of that first arc. And that's when Boulder decided to become a citizen of Saltview, all based on that little throwaway speech that I did before that one battle.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's pretty
they've already
cool.
done. Yeah. I love that some of my groups have already done what you want, because then you can kind of hear how it turns out.
Yeah,
But what you
it sounds like that, and it has ramifications all over. Oh, that's pretty
it
cool.
would too, because now they have a safe place. Technically, Boulder's a citizen of Saltview, so if he ever needs to go somewhere, he can go there, and they'll protect him. That's what citizenry gives you, mostly protection, in a place with no laws.
Yeah, because you definitely need that, or you need to ally with like the big people in power,
And
or
there's
you're kind of fucked.
there's 7 city-states, and only one of them's free. That's only because of a random happenstance that allowed the ruler to get killed through his own carelessness. The other 6 all have Dragon Kings still, and they still enforce slavery. So the slaves are not safe still. So Saltview, they've changed the course of slavery in that place because they've given runaway slaves a place to go.
Yeah.
They've also added art and culture because the slaves are the only ones making art and culture, frowned upon in all the other places.
Why is
So
it
then they're
frowned
using,
on?
because you don't want slaves to be happy. Plus, they're slaves. They are busy doing slave stuff. They don't
True.
have time to do
See,
art and culture.
I wouldn't agree with that. Like, if I was running slaves, I would want them to fill their off times with leisure activities, so they aren't so
Yeah.
fucking hateful.
So you'd be a slave owner like August. August is that kind of slave owner in Tier. August is one of the main NPCs. And if you wanted to do that, like seriously, think about what you want to do with your character. If you want to be a slave owner in Tier that I could use as an NPC for the characters to talk to over the next arc, we could have you be one of the nobles. And I could have the characters interact with you on their mission as a slave owner.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But
Right? You could be that one good slave owner.
not a good slave owner, because I don't think there ever is, but one that is like, he wasn't too terrible, but he did own us. You know,
Is it
like,
evil though if it's the law of the land and it's a law that you can't do anything about, and your choice is to be one or rule them?
that's true. I could definitely,
That's how August
accommodate
looks at
as
it.
best as I can to them, and also they'd be more inclined to defend if something was happening. Because it's like,
That
fuck, I mean, he would be here with us, and without him, we wouldn't have as much comfort. So I get it. It's like not a necessary evil. Well, actually, it is a necessary evil.
but it's also role play, right?
Yeah,
Why
and
would the guy that you're role playing as give a shit about the slaves?
that's true.
You'd have to come up with more of an excuse for him to not be like the rest than to be like the rest.
No,
The
it'd be
norm
more
is
of
to
like,
rip them when
I'm
they're
not
overrun.
for what's this type of thing going on in society, but I have I'm not in a position to make any kind of changes, so I deal with it and try to help as many as I can. And then I buy more. I buy family members. I try to keep lineages together too, in case inevitable day, slavery is over with, at least, or at least I could just stop fucking owning slaves and try to get them away.
Hey, an underground slave railroad? That's an adventure right there. Honestly, you could make that the entire party's purpose is to go from slave state and smuggle out slaves.
Yeah. I see. Now it's giving me ideas where it could also tie into that build a city thing if I could somehow manage to, know,
Why
not
not do
build a
both?
city, but
You
try
have
to
to have a
find.
place to bring them.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say if I can either match up with some financiers or some builders, I'll be like, well, I could bring these people; they'll help, but they're free.
Okay, so that's 2 more things. So then you have to do an adventure to get someone to finance you. One of the merchant houses, ideally.
Mhm.
So
Chat
search
with
it out
people,
and figure
network
out.
while adventuring, and showing that I
Exactly.
am strong enough and serious enough individual that I'm wanting to help, and by doing so, I'm also helping the slaves make a change. Yeah, okay.
And make contact with the Veil of Alliance because they are anti-slavery and
Yeah.
they're all sorcerers. And a sorcerer would actually be a very good choice for being one of the slave takers, or one of the slave. I don't know, what would you be? An emancipator, the slave emancipator.
Uh, I don't know. I would say that's too grandiose of a title, because it's not like I'm trying to free all slaves. I'm just not happy with what's going on in society, and people should be given a fair chance. It's not particularly the slaves; it's everybody that's on all. You know.
So you want to be good on Athos? You're up for the challenge. One of the
Yeah.
hardest things to be. You will actively be pursued by people who have a different agenda. Slave takers are far more common. And
So I'll be at
as a
war with the most aggressive of them.
you will, and as an added bonus for a background thing that kind of ties in, Mitra's background as he was a slave breaker. He walks around with the whip still, so he aggravates slaves with his very presence sometimes. He's actually met a slave that he broke once.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had that happen. I was like, oh, it'd be fun to screw with him with this guy. But I
Yeah.
did it.
Well, see, it seems like we're already creating a purpose, and as you could tell, I design characters around enough opportunities for equal combat and roleplay. Because, as I said, I'm going for both interactions.
That's how it's supposed to be. Everybody had a purpose before they built their guy. Like Eldero just didn't decide to be a druid out of the blue. He wanted to know how he could be useful to a party. Well, a guy who can create water out of nothing in the desert is pretty fucking good. So Eldero made himself indispensable right there.
Yeah,
One example, Mitra wanted to be the big tough. He always wanted to try a Conan guy because he's like you actually. You and Mitra have a lot in common, and he usually makes a sorcerer or some sort of spellcaster, and he's very thoughtful, and his spell selections are usually quite helpful. And yeah, he just went the total opposite this time, made a face basher, and it's been a blast. He even said he's had a lot of fun with this guy in comparison to spellcasters. I mean, Ash was also a bit of a face beater, but he was half dragon. It's a bit of a different story.
yeah. Well, and along with like one, the slave thing. See, now all I want to do is just think about. I know people shouldn't get too complicated with the lore on the character unless it's like you know unless
I,
like it's like a lot like you're trying to just tie yourself into like a RP heavy environment because then yeah you're gonna have to like create a background and intricate story so at any point in time anything in there could be used. I know that's part of like yeah, this is you know a DM needs a
I,
character to have their own character resources like their background and story shit made up so if it's a more open, I guess, more open type of play, yeah, you need character details, or you don't really have shit for a character if you're a DM. That's how I would see it.
I prefer, well, I don't prefer, I just, most of the players don't even do backgrounds, honestly. A lot of people want to sit down there and figure it all out. It's a bit of a task when you actually sit down and do it. Fuck, most players don't even pick a name for the first few sessions because they want it to be something special. I like it that they don't have backgrounds because I can give them backgrounds and give them opportunities. Again, like Mitra, going back and learning the hard way not to go back somewhere when you barely got away the first time.
Yeah. Ooh, single target acid splash. Sorry, I'm currently picking spells for my sorcerer in Neverwinter.
Nice.
As we're talking, yeah.
You'd recognize a lot of the spell names too. That's one thing D&D's done. They've kept a lot of the same spell names over the years.
I
They
was
just
going to
changed
choose
how.
a fire or ice method for my sorcerer, but I'm thinking either a pixie or a panther.
Pixie can always be invisible. Is that one or is that a brownie?
Yeah, the pixie has. Oh no, the panther is a rogue. It's attack bonus +6 on stealth.
Hmm.
Yeah, I read a couple Reddit like min max builds, and they said if you don't you can as long as you follow like at least the stats like the strength and shit. If I follow that and at least the first two, was it spell selections and then the right familiar. After that, I could just go crazy with anything else because all the level ups just boost. the main attacks I have. I guess I don't know. I don't know shit about shit. I haven't played D&D. I just know how to click,
Yeah,
attack, and then rest, so I can get my spell slots back.
yeah,
Because
that's the
it's,
thing too.
but so is there amounts or like what's the methods of travel in your world? Just like any other regular fantasy world, like or if someone's creative enough to create a contraption that would be logical for the universe.
Creating contraptions a bit much because most technology set. Like we were set at the same tech for hundreds of years in between. So it's really up if you want to make it go more. Best way though is you have magic at your disposal. They've had flying anythings, flying islands, flying ships, um, magic carpets. There's lots of ways to get around. Just basic in general though, I'd have the stagecoach. You can walk, take a ship by sea, river boats, that type of thing. As for transportation in D&D, there's so many different ways. I'd be hard pressed to list them all. You got horses, you get flying creatures, you get dragons to ride. Um, fuck, you could ride giant beetles. That's what Athos mostly is. You ride around on giant beetles or giant grasshoppers.
Like you wouldn't allow someone instead of being a combat class to come in just like I don't know how the modules work. I have read stories where there has been like I guess modules a player has played and they just built to be like their stats around enough like to make enough sense to be a crafter slash woodworker or whatever so they can create shields, boats, and defenses. I've seen stuff like that, like read stuff like that in stories. I just didn't know if that was feasible in yours.
So are you saying like if you have the skills to build stuff, can you build stuff? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
it would
saying?
be like dexterity, intelligence, and strength. Like if they did that,
Well, it
and
would
then
be
there was like some kind of you know skills that they
well,
could choose.
that's what Muad'Dib has. What you're talking about is more like a skill thing or a proficiency in second edition. To be a skill in three, proficiency in second, to get the engineering proficiency. So if you had engineering proficiency, then I'd allow you to actually build stuff. Because our education level is way beyond any bunch of people in the desert. Not to mention, depending on the world you're on, you might not even have tools to make stuff possible. That's where magic comes in. Then
Okay.
it doesn't have to make sense. But in general, if you had a guy that had engineering and woodworking, yeah, I'd let you build a giant mansion of a house, no problem. Not only that, other people could hire you. When the group goes to certain places, because Muad'Dib has blacksmithing, he just goes to look for blacksmith work. If they have to kill time, he just gets paid to run the blacksmithy for that one guy in town.
Well, that's
He's
what I was
actually
going to
made a
get
couple
into.
contacts.
Is like if I could be hired out and stuff, because that could also like well, I'm not. This is not something I'm going to choose. Like, I'm going to go for a sorcerer and that type of background I created. But it's just a good idea. It's a something an idea to keep in mind. I didn't know that was an actual thing, and that could be done in playing with you.
It's always the low level thing. I enjoy the low levels the most. When the characters don't have a lot of money. If you don't want to make them go through dungeons all the time, it's a great change to have them just get hired out for mundane shit. I've had characters work fields, uh, work in the mines, mining every day, making money. All they've traded, so they'll use their gold that they got from a dungeon and buy a whole bunch of items in one town, rent a wagon, and carry it to another town. Like going to Tyr, before they left Salt View, they loaded up on a whole bunch of salt and a whole bunch of artwork, and then they used that, or they used that. Then they went to Nibene and traded it all off and made a bundle, made 10 times the return almost. And from
Oh
there,
yeah.
they bought a few. They couldn't buy anything in Nibene because they had to run away because of Mitra. But if they wouldn't have had to run away, they could have bought more trade goods in Nibene, taken them to Gulg, bought more trade goods in Gulg, and then taken it all to Tyr. And Tyr is one of the biggest buyers there is because all they produce is metal. They could have made a bundle on more money, or sorry, more money, more goods.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, trading is the whole thing. They actually have a trader class on Athos.
You do?
Oh yeah, it's all built in. Yeah, like not me. Athos is all TSR. Yeah, they have the trader class. He can actually, he's like an assassin. He gets to use poisons and make poisons.
Okay, yeah. I see.
And then he gets
I didn't know it
barter
got that.
checks.
It can get in that deep, because there's just like so many ways to play, and that's what I'm looking for. More open, and I don't know how I'm gonna like combat, so I can't say. I also want to, I don't want to jump the gun and start saying I want to do this, I want to do all that if I, before I play, because I may change my mind. But I'm definitely interested in like at least meta RP, I guess. Interacting with other players just to get information, or NPCs talking, starting or spreading rumors to try to achieve some kind of goal. Like that prospect, I'm happy about that.
Good idea. I've never had players try to do that before. That
Oh, I
could be
was gonna
effective.
ask, have you ever had a player try to like start rumors, or
Nope.
try
That's a
to
damn
like
fine idea.
to try to play some kind of like sneaky politic in order to fuck over somebody or get an advantage or information?
No, not really. This campaign we're doing right now is probably the most in depth I've ever had a group get in regards to politicking.
Really?
They have now dealt with multiple factions. They've dealt with the king multiple times. Usually, again, most of the groups that I've had were like 80% hack and slash, 20% RP. This is the first time I've really gone hard on the RP, and it's been like almost 60-40 RP way. We've had 24 sessions, and we've only had battles in about maybe 20 of them. Or sorry, not 20, 10 of them.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and they still get XP every single time. They actually get more XP outside of battles just for doing good RP now, because it's generally enjoyable and they get more accomplished. But yeah, in the past it's been they met the king, shot the shit with him for a bit, you give them a mission, they fuck off. Now this is where they haven't drawn a weapon and like they got that ambush on them that I described, but before that they hadn't drawn a weapon for days and days before that.
Hmm. So, so when it comes in terms of their politicking, like, can you give an example, like a specific example, so I have an idea, or it's okay, so the listeners also have an idea of what kind of gangster shit you guys get down with?
The current politicking, like I've said already, is they're trying to frame Kinneara for the murder of Callan. So the politicking they've done, they've talked to at least 3 different merchant house godfathers. They've now talked to the head of the Templars. They talked to the head of the Templar street level, so like a subordinate of the guy who controls
Like a
the street
basic
cops.
grunt.
Yeah, they've also talked to the leader of the Silencist Guild. Very first thing they did on the first day of the investigation was they went to the Silencist Guild. This was their idea first. They wanted to have someone at the trial to be able to tell the truth. They wanted to go talk to the Silencists, the head people, so that they could get someone at the trial who would verify what they wanted. Now, to me, this is a two-edged sword because they're lying. Their entire case is built on a lie, and now they have someone there that's dedicated to telling the truth. But they're hoping that they can just get that guy to tell the truth that they want. I'm not going to make it that easy because when it goes to trial, we're going to role play the trial too. And after watching the Rittenhouse trial, I'm going to channel the fuck out of Binger, and I'm just going to go with the most ridiculous shit. But the funny thing is, the ridiculous shit I'm going to go at them with is going to be the truth, and that's why it's going to be funny because their whole case is a lie. So again, even talking to that effeminate guy, they had to kind of lie to him about why they want to talk to Kinnear in the first place because they can't tell him everything. So
That's
they're
pretty
going around
cool.
having to remember the half truths and the lies that they've told and not get themselves in a trap. They've got
Yeah, you gotta remember that shit, because someone else will.
and they've already told stuff, and I've already screwed with them. Like the guy in the ambush, they told the guy that ambushed him that they were going to leave him alone, and they were just mystified that he still came at them after they said, I'm like, not everyone's just going to believe you. This guy's blown out of his mind on coke like all day. He's super paranoid. You guys have been
You have
watching him
coke
for
in the
3
game?
days. Oh yeah, I have all the drugs. When they went to his
Nice!
place, yeah, when they went to the because drugs aren't frowned upon; they're illegal narcotics, but it depends on where you go. And because Athos or not Athos, Tyr is free at the moment, there's nobody to really enforce the drug laws. The merchant house is the
Oh,
ones that does it.
that gives me.
So
Oh no, I'm trying to save slaves, not create more. I was gonna say I could be a
well, it's
drug
hard.
dealer.
It's so easy to be easy on or to be evil on Athos. You
I
could be a
know.
drug dealer on Athos. It'd
I
be
don't.
so
I'm
easy to
not
be a drug
going
dealer
to
on Athos.
though.
Yeah, see,
Mark
the
my
lure's there.
words, listeners.
So I'll go through the encounter that they did then. So far they've gone to, of the 5 days, 3 of those days were spent each day going to a different merchant house and meeting the godfather of each merchant house. I've made the merchant houses on Athos reflective of the mob. They act like the mob and make them talk like this, the mob, and that kind of thing, like with a Jersey accent, if I can pull it off, that kind of thing.
I got you.
Except for these guys. These guys are called House. I don't have my notes with me.
You're good, man.
Lenaxis. It's like Lenaxis or something like that. Salaxa. That's right. The T is silent. So House Salaxa is the drug dealers. So I decided to make them like Rastas, and specifically, right? So you got the Rasta accent in your idea. They're not black though. There's no black people in my world. All white. So they've got the Rasta accent. The guy that answers the door is talking like a Jamaican guy that I saw on a cooking show just a couple days earlier, who didn't have any teeth left, and I was trying to talk like him. I can't for some reason talk with the accents when I'm on VC. I don't know, maybe I'm not comfortable enough yet, but I'll try to do the accents one day.
We'll get
So
there,
anyway,
everybody.
answer the door is him. He goes and tells the boss that he's there. The godfather of Salaxa, if you can picture, is going to look like the, you ever see Predator 2?
I have years ago. So
Okay, Predator 2 has the Rasta bad guys in it, and the one leader guy with the sunglasses at the very beginning when Danny Glover discovers the Predator. That guy is kind of who I modeled it on. If you
okay.
don't know who he is, there's no point in going in it. But anyway, he's got a really thick accent, and all I kept saying was "Bamba Bamba Rasta Bamba blah blah." I'd say something like that, right? Just a bunch of
Something
gibberish, and then talk
nonsensical.
to them,
Yeah.
and then I would make them do a check to see if they understood what the fuck he just said. So then
That is realistic. You
it is.
you may
They
not know
wouldn't
what
know.
they're saying.
Fortunately for them, Boulder decided to go this time because he had to get up early anyway for another thing. So Boulder was with them. He was able to translate what the hell that guy was saying to them. So they were able to have a proper conversation because Boulder grew up in Tier. So if you're from the city, obviously you have a better idea than most. Tier would be kind of like New York in the sense of a melting pot of all the different cultures of Athos.
Yeah.
And it's also the biggest place with merchant places. They have a place called the Iron Square, and all the buildings in the Iron Square, like Tier, is ancient, so you don't have new real estate anywhere. So having a set spot is prestige. So the person in the biggest house currently is the head merchant house in the town, and there's around it 5 more houses representing the top 5, and you move into those houses depending on your rank right now. So just a little tidbit. But they go and they meet the leader of the Rastas, and I just, when they get to the top of the stairs, they say, "Yeah, you see all the drugs you've ever seen in your life: mountains of blow, Scarface style. There's hookahs with weed in them. You got the equivalent of ludes, so they'd be like beetles and hallucinogenic mushrooms. Anything. It's a smorgasbord." The
Yeah.
role play aspect on my end was he's trying to get them high and drunk and off balance so that he can pump more information because he's mad at them. They don't know this, but he's pissed at them. They've been holding up his drug deals for the last 3 days because, well, they don't have anyone to enforce it. Tithian isn't exactly endorsing it, so they've still been doing it under the table and trying to hide everything. But when the cops are right there watching your place of business, people are reluctant to come in. So they've cost him 3 days of business. This is
Yeah.
my thinking in his mind approaching this meeting. So he wants to get him fucked up, pump him for information, and figure it out. So they go through the encounter, and at the end of the encounter, I've already decided it doesn't matter what they say. He's so high and paranoid all the time. He's gonna fucking send that ambush regardless. But it was a good way to remind them that not everything is logical, and people aren't always logical. And just because you say you're gonna do something doesn't mean they're going to believe you, especially in this world.
That's true.
Like Athos is what I mean, and real life too. You can't always trust what people say. That's what being in business has taught me.
Yeah. And
No.
well, I just thought of an idea for something to do in a game. Like, if you're in a big city and you're trying to get passage somewhere and you're not getting passage, just create like some kind of shell shipping company and undercut a lot of people, and then rent out a boat for one day and just show that, like, if you won't give us passage, we'll just fucking do it ourselves. Try to like, it's kind of like a shitty evil thing to do,
Well,
but
then that's RP opportunity because the other guys aren't going to take that line down. They
yeah.
might try to work up people against you, or they might group up together to lower their rates and go into competition with you. It all depends on the culture and the setting, but that in itself is an adventure.
Well, you do that, and people start like, if we're trying to undercut them, then everyone else tries to. Well, the whole point is to try to like push people in a position where they have, where it's more beneficial to them if they help us, or or the party shows. It's like, just help us out, man. We're resourceful, we're smart. You could see that we're capable of shit. Just so you can get past. It's just an idea for an RP type of thing. It's different ways I would interact in situation. If the people are more slimy in company, Now, if they were like, oh, well-to-do, like upstanding, doesn't deal with any shadiness, hey, you don't do that to them. At least I wouldn't. My sorcerer wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't try to.
It depends on what else your sorcerer has for skills, because you're not just a sorcerer. You have other
Well, that's
statistics.
true. I'm
You
just.
can make a sorcerer talker, or you can make a sorcerer tough guy.
Yeah,
You can
sorcerers
make a
can be talkers
sorcerer
because it's all for charisma.
sneaker. You go around and murder all your competition. Not saying you can't, right? In that scenario, you want to
Yeah,
undercut them. Well, there's no better way to undercut than eliminating your competition completely. You kidnap their family and hold them for ransom, get some money. Like
do
you can
some
do all
mob
that kind
shit.
of stuff. It's just it's harder to do that in a group of people because the whole point is for people to do that together.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that stuff, it's good to have a whole group of
Well, that's why I
people
was saying I was
that are going to
suggesting
be
something
like-minded.
less evil, and it's more of like, well, these guys are slimy, but they're the only ones that could do this for us, so everyone probably would get on board because all it is just putting them in a spot where someone else would want to undercut us, giving us cheap passage, or it shows that like we're capable of standing up to them, so they can't just like try to outmuscle us, muscling them into taking us across the lake or something. I don't know. Just just an idea, just different interactions and how to do things RP wise. Add some variety to the world. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I'm not sure how I would approach that because it would all depend on the circumstances. But it'd be a good challenge. I think it'd be fun.
Oh, for sure, it'd be a great challenge, especially if like rolls are low or just the stats or skills aren't there.
I
Like
think
the
that
other
scenario would be fun in a futuristic setting like Shadowrun, where you
yeah,
would have
I do want to play Shadowrun. That environment looks cool.
fucking love. It's fun. Hard to get a group that's into it. Most people end up just liking D&D more in the end. I found anyone
I
I've put
also
onto it ends up wanting to play D&D at the end.
I also wanted to get into Call of Cthulhu. I know that's very hard. And
Yeah,
Call of Cthulhu and what was another one? I think there was a Star Wars one that sounded really cool.
yeah. I have the Star Wars one too. I've actually played
Oh,
every version of
40K
Star Wars RPG
tabletop.
ever. The
That's what I was
40k
thinking.
one, yeah.
Because that gets
40k
into
and fantasy.
Lovecraftian. Man, I want to explore some Lovecraft concepts in D&D. That's a very big interest of mine.
I
Like
made a Fallout RPG.
that's pretty
Made
dope.
it all from scratch. Made the rules, made the characters, everything. Not photocopied, copied the monster tokens because that was back when I played on my board. And I made a small version of Irradiated Wasteland, and it was pretty fun.
How'd you make a
Had
small
power
version?
armor. Honestly, I don't remember off the top of my head right now. I can't remember the location I picked, but I had locations figured out, and there was a few places to go explore. That's a faction, the whole bit.
Hmm. Well, fuck. Like for 40. So you said you did Fallout. Fallout is pretty interesting. Like I like playing Fallout 76. I really
Yeah,
do.
I use the Genesis rules to do it because they're just, while they don't have their own settings, you can make almost anything you want with those rules. Like Genesis is a good system. It's GENSYS. And yeah, it's a great system for anything generic that you want to make your own. So I don't know what would be interesting.
Yeah. Like Well, cross 40k and Cthulhu would be pretty fucking awesome. It'd be hard. It'd be like super hard.
Let's say you liked Game of Thrones and you wanted to make a Game of Thrones RPG with characters and stats in the whole book, the bit. That's where you could use Genesis.
Oh, really? I should learn these systems so I have an understanding what the difference is and why one would be better for this type of world than the other. Because I don't really have a basis.
Without numbers, Genesis is kind of fun for people that don't like counting and adding and tons of modifiers. It's just you roll more dice and different kinds of dice. And the more faces the dice have, the better your odds usually are. So I call them gimmick dice. So Genesis
Ah,
uses gimmick dice. D20 uses a 20-sided modifier. D100 is what most of the 40k and fantasy are.
yeah,
And
because
there's a
there's
D6
so many
system, which is quick
soldiers and
play.
attacks going on. You need a lot of points.
I've played RPGs that use D8s for everything.
That's a
Warhammer
weird
uses
number.
D6s. The old ass RPG for Star Wars used D6s.
The old ass RPG. So
And
there was an old RPG tabletop.
oh yeah, this is from the 90s. It was all D6s and it had the exploding D6s rule.
What is that?
So if you roll a 6, you get to roll again. If you roll a 6, you get to roll again, and you add them all together. As long as you keep getting sixes, you can make giant numbers.
That's like the game of life. You just get whatever number. I think it was actual. If you landed on 6, you got another roll. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
no. It was if you landed
Monopoly does
even.
double.
Monopoly does double. Yeah, if you
I think
landed
so.
even, oh not even, if you landed on double with not Yahtzee, fucking Game of Life. I keep fucking up my games I'm talking about. Game of Life dice. If you did 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, if you landed on something like that, you got a second roll. So it sounds kind of similar, except it's a single dice, obviously, or you'd get in like the 20s of fucking attack points. But fuck, man.
So you got to
I
buy
really,
some D4s so we can make you a character next time.
yeah, I'll start looking into. You said D4, the books. I'll start looking at that, or some way to
Or
get the
alternatively,
resources.
well, you can just use an online dice roller too.
Yeah, I know there's page creators for characters that have all the modules, expansions, and shit. At least Neckbeardia advertised something like that. That's where I started getting all the programs because they advertised a couple. I'm like, well, that's cool. What other ones exist? And then I went on Steam and found one is advertised as a classic RPG, but like I said, it's all you're doing is just creating a D&D world, and then other players log into the characters, make them, and then play in what you made out. Essentially, it's just a game builder or a level builder, but it runs off like a it's like Baldur's Gate, but more, I guess, RP like turn-based table. Players have more control and they have to, click to roll and shit. I think that's how I understood one of the Steam games. I don't know, but I'm definitely going to be searching well, not searching, but buying at 4th edition and then looking at other programs for my own, you know, toying around with. Maybe I could do something with the Underdorks with one of these programs.
I'm
But
trying to
what's
find a character sheet for you to send you so you can fill it in. You got a printer.
right on? Well, what is up next for your next session in D&D?
I've been trying to remember what the hell we left on. We smoked a bunch of weed, but really I think how was it? We dealt with the effeminate guy, got the permission on Kanira. Honestly, I was so high last time I'd have to look at my notes and see what the hell I wrote down. We got a new supply guy and gave us this stuff, something or other diesel. So wrecked. Also, what's his nuts? Moody had to work the next day, so we stopped early. So honestly, I think it was just a bunch of role play. The next time they're on day 6, and they're going to tell me what they're going to do, because again, it's their investigation and where they're going to take it now. There isn't much left for them to do except get into her house to see about evidence, because that clear glass rod that they took, that Boulder grabbed from her when he broke into her house the first time, they figured out that that was a communications device. So now they just want to find her and get eyes on her. And basically, I think they're going to probably they're going to capture her and put her in jail so that she doesn't get away. Because she knows, obviously, that they're after her now because that crystal rod is missing.
Oh yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, she knows they're after him, so then they have to do that, and they might be able to finish this investigation early. Because if they can capture her or get into position to capture her next time, then they could just expedite it to the trial, which would be nice. Because if they get it done early, I'll give them extra XP for doing it fast.
Oh hell yeah, panther. What should my panther's name be, Mr. Man?
You could name it after Cthulhu guy's cat.
Oh, Lovecraft's cat. I'll just name him Cthulhu because you said Cthulhu first. That was the first name I'll recognize. But I guess I'll save game here and get an hour and a half down. I named my save file Undersorks and not Underdorks. Save game. There we go. But let me fucking hit